The hospital wing had grown crowded, air heavy with smoke from conjured torches and the clamour of too many voices. Harry sat on the bed, trembling, blanketed but still cold, while the world fractured around him into pieces he could barely follow. Hermione never left his side. She perched on the edge of his bed, her hand resting lightly against his wrist. She wasn't speaking now, just a steady warmth, her presence anchoring him when everything else blurred. Fred and George hovered close by, uncharacteristically solemn. They muttered assurances to Ginny, who stood stiff with red eyes, refusing to cry but faltering each time she looked at Harry's pale, battered face. They pulled her between them, their jokes buried, offering her the sort of steady loyalty only siblings could manage. Ron and Neville were further down the ward, their voices raised as they pressed Dumbledore for answers. "What happened in there? What did he see?" Ron demanded, eyes darting back to Harry with naked worry. Neville echoed him, softer but insistent. "Someone has to tell us something." Dumbledore, grave and unreadable, placed a hand on each of their shoulders and murmured reassurance without detail, urging patience, his gaze flicking back to Harry's still figure. Near the ward centre, the Ministry had clumped together like a pack of restless dogs. Fudge puffed and shouted about safeguards and explanations, red-faced with denial. Professors, McGonagall and Flitwick stood tense but resolute, pressing him to think of the students first. Snape remained quiet, slightly in shadow, his gaze unreadable. His dark eyes lingered on Harry for long stretches, not sympathetic, not cruel, but as if measuring something he couldn't yet name. Cho had come running, her face blotched with tears, moving back and forth between the beds like a bird trapped in a storm. She wrung her hands, asked the same questions over and over. "What happened? Is he hurt? Why won't he speak? Cedric isn't dead, right, Harry?" Her voice breaking until Fred and George gently pulled her aside. "Easy now, Cho, easy, you'll rattle him worse." But Cho only grew more frantic, fighting to get back to Harry's side until another figure swept into the ward. Molly Weasley, apron still on, face etched with maternal fire, gathered Cho into her arms with a firmness that brooked no refusal. "Hush, dear, hush, let him rest." Molly's arms wrapped around the sobbing girl as she guided her slowly toward the doors, her voice low and soothing. Cho clung to her, still weeping, until they disappeared into the hall. The sound of Amos Diggory's sobs carried on the far side of the wing, raw and unbearable. Arthur stayed with him, holding him upright when his knees buckled, his own face drawn and pale. The grief was a jagged backdrop to everything, Cedric's name whispered and cried in fragments that made Harry's chest seize. And still, through it all, Hermione sat steady. She didn't pepper Harry with questions, didn't cry out like the others. She simply held her place, her presence quiet but unyielding, as though she understood he couldn't bear one more demand on his mind. When Harry's eyes flicked toward her, she met them fully. Patient, unwavering, waiting for him when he was ready. The next day was all the same. Harry woke to the dim hush of the hospital wing. The lamps glowed low and steady, a faint golden haze against the whitewashed walls. His whole body felt weighted, as though he'd been buried beneath blankets of stone, but his mind raced, Cedric falling, the cold laughter, the green light. He turned his head, and the memory followed him. He didn't speak. He couldn't. Madame Pomfrey pressed a goblet into his hand, the rim clinking faintly against his teeth. The potion tasted metallic, bitter, but he swallowed it down without question. She fussed, muttering about shock and exhaustion, but her words slid past him as if spoken through glass. Around him, the world was fractured, voices moving in and out of focus. Hermione sat at his bedside, her quill scratching furiously at parchment that she never turned. Every so often she glanced up, lips pressed together, eyes brimming with questions she dared not ask. She looked older, somehow, in the way her back was so straight, the way her knuckles whitened around her quill. Ron paced near the window, hands shoved deep in his pockets. He muttered under his breath, half-formed curses and furious sighs. Every few minutes he'd stop, glance at Harry as if about to speak, then keep moving, shoulders tight. Dumbledore came last. He didn't say a word. He settled into the shadow of a chair, long hands folded, watching with an expression drained of twinkle and whimsy. His presence filled the room, not with noise, but with stillness. Harry could feel the weight of it, steady and constant, like a hand against his back in the dark. Harry drifted between waking and sleep, Cedric's name whispering in both. When Madame Pomfrey dimmed the lamps, the silence pressed down heavier than the blankets. The second morning dawned grey, and Harry's eyes opened to Ron standing by his bed, holding toast like a peace offering. "Got you something," Ron muttered, setting the plate down awkwardly. His voice was rough, sleep-deprived. Harry stared at the toast until Ron dropped into the chair and scowled at the floor. "Right, just eat it when you feel like it. I'll be around if you need anything." He crossed his arms and leaned back. His foot tapped restlessly against the flagstones. By evening, Dumbledore returned. He crossed to the bed with quiet steps, and for the first time Harry turned his eyes toward him. The old wizard laid a hand lightly on his shoulder. It was steady, grounding. Harry's breath eased without meaning to. When night fell again, Madame Pomfrey dimmed the lamps. Hermione, half asleep in her chair, stirred as Harry let out a faint rasp of sound. Not a word, not yet, but something. Her head shot up, eyes wide. She leaned closer, her voice a whisper. "It's all right, Harry, when you're ready." For the first time since the graveyard, he let his eyes close without seeing green light behind them. By the evening of the fourth day, the hospital wing was quieter. Madame Pomfrey had managed to keep most visitors out, though Dumbledore lingered in the far shadows. He had been a constant presence, unobtrusive, watchful. Harry's voice was stronger now, though still thin. He turned his head toward the headmaster. "He is back." Dumbledore rose from his chair and came to the bedside. His eyes, so often twinkling, were grave. "Tell me, Harry." Haltingly, painfully, Harry recounted what he could. The graveyard, the ritual, Voldemort's return. His voice caught more than once. He had to stop, press his fists against his eyes, and breathe before forcing himself onward. Dumbledore did not interrupt. He listened, hands folded, his expression carved with sorrow. When Harry finished, voice rasping into silence, the headmaster laid a hand on the boy's shoulder. "You have done what few could," Dumbledore said quietly. "You endured. You returned. And though the world may doubt, I will not. Voldemort's return is truth, and you have carried that truth back." Harry looked down at his hands, trembling against the sheets. "No one will believe me." "Some will not," Dumbledore agreed softly. "But those who matter, those who know you, already do." He cast a glance toward Hermione, who hadn't let go of Harry's hand. Ron too lingered nearby, feigning interest in a chess piece, but listening to every word. For the first time, Harry let his head sink into the pillow without dread clutching at him. His voice cracked as he whispered, "Thank you." And though the shadows lengthened in the ward, he felt a spark of something stir. Not peace, not yet, but the faintest beginning of it. The castle felt wrong in the days after the maze. The banners still hung, the candles still burned, but Hogwarts had gone silent in a way Harry had never heard before. Laughter in the halls died halfway through. Quills scratched quieter in lessons. No one spoke Cedric's name above a whisper. Harry noticed that the Great Hall no longer felt like the same place, where students had cheered him through fire. Now, it was an echo chamber of half-heard questions and glances that lingered too long. He had grown used to being stared at, but this was different. This time, it wasn't awe, it was fear. Madame Pomfrey let him leave the hospital wing that morning, though Dumbledore had made him promise not to return to classes yet. His hand still shook when he buttoned his shirt. His reflection in the mirror looked like someone who hadn't slept in weeks. Ron and Hermione had been walking on eggshells around him. They tried to fill silences with chatter, news about how the Ministry was crawling through the grounds, that Beauxbaton would be leaving early, that Durmstrang's ship had raised black sails for the first time in decades, but none of it reached him. He just nodded and said, "Right," as if the word could make the world steady again. That afternoon, Harry sat in the courtyard with Ron, staring into the fountain where the wind bent the water's surface like thin glass. The quiet was interrupted by two sharp voices from the colonnade. "You can't hide it forever, Albus." "Fudge," Dumbledore's low reply. "I'm not hiding anything. I'm ensuring the truth is told responsibly, something you've never been fond of, Cornelius." The argument stopped when they saw Harry. Fudge's face tightened. He gave a stiff nod before walking off, muttering to the auras that flanked him. Dumbledore lingered. "Harry," he said quietly, "would you walk with me?" Ron half rose as if to follow, but Dumbledore shook his head gently. "Just Harry, if you please." Harry followed. The stone halls swallowed their footsteps. They passed portraits pretending to nap and staircases that didn't dare move. "Moody is gone," Dumbledore said finally without looking back. He was not in his office when the auras went to find him. His trunk, however, was informative. Harry frowned. "Informative how?" "In time," said Dumbledore. "For now, you must understand that what you endured was no accident of fate. It was crafted. Every spell you faced, every lesson, every turn in that maze, it was built to deliver you somewhere else." Harry's pulse quickened. "You mean the graveyard?" "Yes," Dumbledore said softly. "That place was waiting for you. Someone made certain you would arrive." They walked in silence for several corridors until they reached the heavy gargoyle guarding Dumbledore's office. The headmaster gave the password in a tone that brooked no argument. "Lemon drop." The staircase carried them up in circles of quiet stone. At the landing, the smell of parchment and old candle wax met them. Fawkes stirred on his perch and let out a low, sorrowful trill. The room beyond was dim, its corners swallowed by shadow. The lamps had been lowered and the windows drawn. A half-dozen people stood inside. McGonagall, Snape, two auras, and the hunched figure of Cornelius Fudge, wringing his hat in his hands. The air was heavy. Dumbledore's voice, though calm, cut through the stillness. "Harry, there is something you need to see." A chair had been set in the centre of the room. Its occupant was shackled hand and foot, his head bowed, breath shallow. At first, Harry thought the man was asleep, or dead. Then he looked up. The eyes were familiar. They were the same eyes from his dreams. Fever bright, twitching with some inner fire, staring at him through the haze of memory and fear. Harry's stomach dropped. "That's..." "Yes," Dumbledore said, stepping forward. "Barty Crouch Jr." The name hung in the air like a curse. McGonagall's lips pressed thin. Snape's arms folded, his gaze unreadable. The auras shifted uncomfortably. Crouch Jr. smiled faintly, his lips cracking. "The boy who lived," he rasped. "The boy who walked into the grave." Harry's throat was dry. He glanced at Dumbledore, who only said, "He's under Veritaserum, Harry. He will tell us everything." That was when Fudge broke. "Everything?" he sputtered. "You mean to tell me this man, a known Death Eater, was teaching my citizens' children under our very noses. Impossible! Mad Eye Moody was vetted by... Snape's voice cut through, cold and precise. It wasn't Moody you vetted, Minister. It was him. Crouch gave a guttural laugh that sent chills up Harry's spine. Not impossible, Minister, just inconvenient. The laughter echoed in the rafters. Dumbledore looked to Harry, his face grave. You asked for answers, he said softly. Now you will have them. The room held its breath. Chains rasped when Barty Crouch Jr. shifted, the sound small but sharp in the lamplight. Veritaserum left a sheen on his lip. He looked thinner in stillness, like a man the truth was eating from the inside out. Dumbledore stood the way a judge stands, straight, without pomp, eyes clear. We will begin, he said, not asking. State your name. Barty Crouch Jr., the bound man replied, his voice settling around the syllables, as though they were a cloak he had missed. For the record, Dumbledore continued, the calm almost tender, did you place Harry Potter's name in the Goblet of Fire? Yes. How? Crouch's gaze flicked to Harry and glowed. By persuading the Goblet there was a fourth school. Its list had one candidate. Snape's quill scratched once on a small card. One note, no flourish. McGonagall's mouth compressed to a line. Did you assume Alastor Moody's identity? Yes. How did you capture him? Dumbledore asked, and the room tightened. Describe it exactly. No omissions. Crouch smiled. Thin. Avid. You want craft? He murmured. The method that made me real. Dumbledore's hand barely moved, a small gesture to proceed. Crouch inhaled, and when he spoke again, the cadence changed. The words warmed with memory, glazed with a sick pride. I watched him for weeks. His eyes unfocused as if the office were sliding away, and a rain-dark lane were rising in its place. Alastor kept a ritual of paranoia. He never took the same path home 2 nights running, never opened his door without wand in his left hand, never drank from a cup he had not rinsed himself. He trusted the strength of his caution more than he trusted the world. It was admirable. He almost sighed. I studied his limp, the way he favoured the right knee in rain, the places his magical eye never lingered. He did not like mirrors, and he distrusted them. He wore the smell of burnt peat and iron, and there was always a trace of bitter root on his breath. Snape's quill hovered. For the first time, his eyes slid sideways toward the captive, something like reluctant notice catching there before he shuttered it. Storm night, Crouch went on, one of those slant rains that turn streets into threads of glass. He was at his table, runes and dossiers and a map of eastern hamlets. He poured from his flask and did not drink. He never drank at home until he'd tested the cup. The smile sharpened. I knocked. 2 taps, a pause, 1 tap. A rhythm from a case he'd worked in Minsk. He opened by inches with a shield on the jamb. I spoke through the gap in a voice I'd been practicing for days. Thin, young, afraid. Sir? I think they're outside. He let the image hang a beat longer than necessary. He hesitated, only a heartbeat. But in that heartbeat, pity found a crack in caution. Crouch flexed his fingers against the manacles, remembering. He drew the door wider with his wand. The shield flared, then thinned. That was it. I cast first, concuss him through the gap, low, at his hip. It made him stumble forward, not back. He answered with a sweep that shattered the coat stand and ricocheted down the hall. His second curse scorched the banister and took 2 hairs from my temple. He is, or was, a true duelist. Even falling, he calculated. Crouch licked dry lips. I set the hook then. Flagrate, binding lash, not to crush, but to turn his balance. He met it, cut it, and tried to apparate from his knees. I had laid a dampening ring already. His face when he found he could not leave. He laughed softly. Do you know the look a thunderhead wears when it realizes the sea will not move? He had that look. McGonagall's knuckles went pale on her wand. Dumbledore's expression did not change, but a sorrow passed through it like the shadow of a bird. I used his own furniture, Crouch said, a shock through the table leg, a chain charmed to the grain of the floorboards. He bit clean through a leather strap. I would have been proud of him if pride were a thing I thought he needed. Enough, flourish, Snape said, tone soft as a scalpel. The polyjuice. I took hair from his head while he slept, Crouch replied, still in that fluent, fevered calm. Every dawn. 2-3 strands from the crown. Easy enough with a careful charm. I brewed a month's supply in a clean cauldron and decanted to vials. I adjusted for the iron taste he carried. It helped. And I practiced the limp until my muscle remembered it better than my bones. Snape's gaze ticked to Dumbledore, then away. The calculation finished. The trunk, he said. 7 locks, Crouch answered, strata of spaces. He slept in the 7th, where the air is thinnest and the light does not know how to land. I fed him. I kept him alive. I spoke to him once, only once, because I wanted to hear what he would say when he saw himself warned by another. He told me to kill him and be done. He had no poetry left. I left the lamp burning so he would know there was a world above him he could not touch. Harry's stomach turned. In his mind flashed Moody's gruff praise, the steadying clunk of the wooden leg, the eye's tireless sweep. Now, all of it, inverted, a mask pulled taut over a man in a box. Dumbledore's voice came level, the iron showing at last. You took a man's life and made it an instrument. I made him useful, Crouch said, which is more than his retirement would have done. Continue, Dumbledore said. Your father, your killings, then the tournament. My father, he began almost conversational, was a man of law. He loved the rules more than he loved me. Barty Crouch Sr. kept order by the book, and every slight I ever felt, every word, every look, he kept inside that book and shut the cover on me. His fingers flexed on the iron. Do you know what it is to live as a ghost inside your own house? To have a man of your blood look through you as if you are glass? McGonagall's jaw tightened. Snape's face was the same blank mask it had worn all evening, but the cold in his eyes deepened. Why did you kill him? Fudge demanded before Dumbledore could speak. The minister's voice had the brittle edge of someone trying to deny the shape of what he was hearing. Crouch laughed then, a small, ugly sound. Why? Because he walked past me and called me by the name of his calf or his ledger. He was civility incarnate. He was better at pretending not to see me than any of his speeches. I waited. I learned. I slipped things into his cups, little poisons that took the sharpness out of his days, that left him trembling and soft and aware. I wanted him to feel small. I wanted him to know what it felt like to be less than a man in his own house. He cocked his head, eyes searching the faces around him for something like approval, and finding only horror. That did not stop him. It took weeks, he said, as if reading a diary. He grew thin. He complained that his legs betrayed him. He kept calling for the healers, accusing fate, accusing time. I sat at the foot of his bed and watched him become a man who begged for my mercy. His voice went flat. When he died, I was there. I watched him die, slowly. I wanted him to be conscious of each ache. I wanted him to understand that the rules he'd loved could become a noose. Snape's lip curled. You poisoned your own father. He liked rules, Crouch said, as if that were an explanation. He would have liked that the law were the instrument of his humiliation. It was justice of a sort. It made my blood burn in a way I had never known. A hollow silence fell. Even Fudge's mouth hung open with the shape of an argument he had yet to make. Dumbledore's voice, when it came, was soft and slow, as though he were naming a thing to keep it from spreading. You did not stop there. Crouch Jr. smiled, and there was hideous light behind the smile. No, once I tasted it, power, contagion, the moment when another life folds under your hand. I could not stop. He watched the faces before him one by one, as if to catalogue their reactions. I left. I walked into towns where no one knew my name. I took odd jobs. I slept in inns. And at night, I thought. He described it in deliberately simple sentences, each one making the room colder. Women alone on the green. I would watch, and at dusk I would cross and offer help or a flask. Men returning from market, exhausted. There was always a moment when the guard dropped. I was careful, quick. Not a thing of spectacle, not at first. A strike like a snapped twig, then away. The thrill was not the weapon, it was the taking. You understand? The rush that followed, proof that I could change the world by a small, private cruelty. That if I wished, I could take and it would obey. Dumbledore's face had hardened into lines Harry had never thought the man's eyes could wear. You told no one. You carried on beneath the world's skirts. You thought yourself invisible. Crouch's eyes burned. Invisible until I was not. Until I was hunted and finally clever enough to slip back under a name no one would suspect. You punish me, headmaster. I deserve it. But do not pretend you did not glance away sometimes. The world was busy. There, at the edges of his words, Dumbledore's reply pressed. I did not glance away. Yet he said only, "Go on." You think it was only slaughter for the sake of slaughter, Crouch said, watching Harry now as if he were the audience that mattered. But it was two things, a rehearsal and a gift. I learned how to be unseen. I learned what panic smells like. And I learned how people bend when they do not know what is attacking them. Those towns, those quiet places, were my practice fields. Dumbledore, you were busy trying to find souls that have already crossed the veil. You had fires to put out, debates to referee, ministries to calm. The little tragedies, they are noise in the larger order. I cleaned them away because I could. A thin sound went through the room, like glass cooling too fast. You did not clean them away, Dumbledore said, each word a quiet hammer. I found the broken families of your victims, Barty. I found homes broken. I sat with widows and children while officials chased Ash. They will have closure and hopefully peace with the knowledge of your present condition. Do not mistake sorrow's silence for indifference. Crouch's grin trembled and held. Perhaps you brought bandages, but you never lit the lamp on my name until I chose to stand in it. And I don't think they will find peace knowing the famous Albus Dumbledore failed to save their loved ones. For the first time ever, Harry saw Dumbledore's jaw clenched, his fists tightened, and a quiet rage in his eyes. Harry thought, if the moment lasted a second longer, Crouch Jr. would be no more. Now, the tournament, Snape cut in, voice not quite steady. He adjusted his grip on the quill and did not write. How did you shape Potter? Crouch's eyes brightened. I admired him first, he said. Do you know that? The boy has good instincts. Protective, impulsive, brave in the wrong order. I set obstacles to teach him speed, without panic, force without waste. I found his reliance on a small family of spells and pressed him until he learned others. I gave him opponents who exploited his blind angles. I taught him to hold a shield while moving forward. I taught him to stand in fire and count. Harry flinched. The dragon's heat roared up his spine. Crouch went on, voice almost tender. He is not merely lucky, he learns. Most children freeze when their first 2 spells fail. Potter learns at the edge. It was my honour to polish that edge until it was sharp enough to interest a god. God, McGonagall repeated, disgust cracking the word. My master, Crouch said simply, and for the first time the mania softened into reverence. To serve him is to become more than a son to a man who never said my name with love. Dumbledore's rageful stare did not waver. What did you report to him? Everything that made the boy usable, Crouch replied. Reflexes, moral habits. He will step between power and a weaker thing even when it is tactically idiotic. He will not run from a hopeless fight if the correct name is spoken. He will endure pain if he believes it buys time for someone else. He is a child who thinks suffering is currency. His gaze held Harry's. It is a rare coin. Snape's eyes flicked once to Dumbledore and back. The glance was small, the meaning not. For a heartbeat, the classroom years behind another boy's mask trembled at the edge of the present. And when the cup took him, Dumbledore asked quietly. Crouch's breath hitched, not with sorrow, with thrill. Then, my work was perfect. The portkey delivered him to the place my master had chosen. Earth taste, bone, dust, a circle that sings when blood touches it. I would have liked to see the moment. His face changed, cracking. Tell me, he said suddenly to Harry, the Veritaserum dragging the plea raw. Did he speak my name? Did he say, Barty? Did he praise the faithful one who opened the way? Harry's mouth worked. No sound came. Cedric's hand, the wand light, the whispering dead. Voldemort's grey eyes widening when the wands locked, not with fear, but with interest. Enough, Dumbledore said, and the words struck like a bar falling. You shaped a child for slaughter to earn the favour of a murderer. You will answer for every life you ended, your father's among them, and for every life you tried to end through him. Crouch's lips wrinkled over his teeth. I would do it again, he whispered. 1,000 times, for him. Silence opened, wide and depthless. Fudge cleared his throat, voice papery. There will be, well, of course there must be, procedures. McGonagall didn't turn. Restraints, Minister, now. The auras moved. Chains clinked softly. Crouch lowered his head at last, a spent thing with a grin still ghosting his mouth. He will be pleased, he murmured. No one answered. Dumbledore stepped to Harry's side and rested a hand on his shoulder. It was a small, human touch in a room that felt scraped clean of warmth. The lamps hissed. Forks did not sing. When the door closed and the chains retreated down the corridor, the headmaster remained very still. He did not apologise for being one man. He did not offer comfort. He did not believe. He simply said softly, We will name every truth. We will tell every family. And we will be ready. Harry nodded once because he could not do anything else. In his ears, the words, He did not say my name, rang and rang, less a boast now than a crack where the dark bled through. He thought of Cedric's father's scream. He thought of Hermione's hand finding his in the hospital. He thought of fire he had walked through and fire he had not. Outside, the castle lived. Footsteps, distant laughter, the neglected bravery of ordinary days. Inside, truth had changed the air. It would not change back. The castle stood reflected in the waters of the Black Lake, its towers mirrored in silver and gold beneath the early evening sun. A gentle breeze stirred the reeds along the shoreline. No classes were held, no bells rang, no students hurried through corridors. The entire castle seemed quieter, waiting. Harry stood among the crowd gathered along the shore. Students from every house filled the sloping hillside that overlooked the lake. Black robes stretched in every direction. Professors stood among them rather than apart from them. Ministry officials had arrived from London. Former Hogwarts students filled the back rows. The Beauxbatons carriage rested near the water's edge. The Durmstrang ship floated silently in the distance. Nobody spoke above a whisper. The only sound was the gentle lapping of water against stone. Harry stared at the white marble platform that had been constructed beside the lake. Simple, polished oak. A single yellow and black banner draped across the lid. No trophies, no medals, no Triwizard Cup, just the colours of Hufflepuff House. Beside Harry, Hermione stood with her hands clasped tightly together. Ron was unusually silent. Ginny stared at the water. Neville's eyes never left the coffin. Fred and George stood shoulder to shoulder, neither of them smiling. Even Peeves was absent. The silence felt sacred. Harry hadn't slept much since the graveyard. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw green light, saw Cedric falling, saw the expression frozen on his face. Sometimes he still expected to see Cedric walking down a corridor, expected to hear his laugh in the Great Hall, expected to look across the Quidditch pitch and find him there. Then reality returned, and it hurt all over again. A movement near the front drew Harry's attention. Amos Diggory approached the platform. The crowd parted for him. The older man looked 20 years older than he had a week ago. His shoulders seemed smaller, his hair greyer, his eyes hollow. He carried a folded Hufflepuff scarf in both hands. The same scarf Cedric had worn countless times throughout his years at Hogwarts. Amos reached the coffin. For several seconds, he simply stood there, looking at it, touching the polished wood, running trembling fingers across the Hufflepuff colours. The lake remained silent. The castle remained silent. Even the wind seemed to wait. Finally, Amos laid the scarf across the coffin. Then he stepped back. Professor Sprout approached next. Her eyes were red. She placed a bouquet of yellow flowers beside the scarf. Not magical flowers, not rare flowers, simple ones. The kind that grew naturally throughout the grounds. The kind Cedric would have recognised. One by one, members of Hufflepuff House followed, each leaving something behind. A badge, a photograph, a handwritten note, a Quidditch glove, a pressed flower, a ribbon, small pieces of a life. Small reminders that Cedric had belonged to people, that he had mattered. Harry felt his throat tighten. Then, the water began to move. A murmur spread through the crowd. Heads turned toward the lake. The surface parted. Merpeople emerged from the depths. Dozens of them, perhaps hundreds. They rose slowly from the dark water, gathering in a great semicircle around the shoreline. Their spears remained lowered, their faces solemn. Among them stood the village elder Harry remembered from the second task. The old merperson raised a hand. The crowd fell completely silent. Then the singing began. Harry had heard merpeople sing before. Underwater, strange, beautiful. This was different. The sound drifted across the lake like mist. The melody felt older than Hogwarts, older than the castle, older than the lake itself. It was mournful without being despairing, sad without being hopeless. The notes echoed against the mountains beyond the water. Students lowered their heads, professors closed their eyes. Even the ministry officials stood motionless. The song carried memories with it, or perhaps grief simply made memories easier to find. Harry remembered Cedric helping younger students, Cedric laughing during Quidditch practice, Cedric shaking his hand after the first task, Cedric standing beside him before the maze, side by side. Everything is gonna be all right. The memory hit like a knife. Harry looked away. but there was nowhere to hide from it. The song continued, and above them, movement appeared in the sky. A flock of owls emerged from the forbidden forest. They circled silently overhead. Then came the hippogriffs, several of them, gliding over the lake, not close enough to disturb the ceremony, just watching, as though nature itself had come to pay its respects. The merpeople's song slowly faded. The final note lingered across the water, then disappeared. Silence returned. Professor Sprout stepped forward. She looked out over the gathered students. At Hufflepuff House? At the coffin? At Amos? Then she began to sing. Her voice was quiet, old. It sounded like something passed down through generations, something sung in fields long before Hogwarts existed. A Hufflepuff song. When fields lie bare and summer's done, we gather still beneath the sun. The seed may fall, the grain may sleep, but none we love are ours to keep. The hand that sowed, the hand that shared, the hand that lifted when none was spared. Though winter comes and daylight fades, we walk beside the paths he made. Harry glanced toward Cho. She stood near the front, her face streaked with tears. For a moment she tried to sing. The words caught in her throat. She lowered her head, unable to continue. Beside her, several Hufflepuffs gently picked up the verse, carrying it for her. The song continued. No grand orchestra, no magical accompaniment, just voices, students, teachers, friends, family, an entire school mourning together. When the final verse came, Amos tried to join. His voice cracked immediately. The words died. For a moment, Harry thought the older man would collapse. Then the crowd sang louder, not overwhelming him, supporting him, finishing the song with him, carrying the weight he could no longer bear alone. The final note faded. Silence settled once more. Dumbledore stepped forward. Golden light reflected from the lake behind him. For a moment, he looked older than Harry had ever seen him. Not powerful, not legendary, simply tired, simply sad. He looked at the coffin, then at the students gathered before him. When he finally spoke, his voice carried easily across the shore. Students, friends, and family, he began. The year has ended as few of us could have wished. He looked out over the crowd, not with authority, but with something that looked like shared exhaustion. We came together under the promise of friendship between our schools, and for a time that promise held true. We have seen courage, brilliance, and selflessness. We have seen skill honed and hearts tested. And yet, his eyes flickered to the Hufflepuff students. We have lost one of our own. A hush fell deeper still. Even Draco had brewed tears that annoyed his father standing behind him. Dumbledore's hand came to rest upon the coffin's edge. Cedric Diggory was a Hufflepuff, a student who embodied fairness, decency, and quiet strength. He played no games of ambition. He sought no spotlight. And yet, when faced with danger, he acted as he always did, with honour. It is tempting, when confronted with such loss, to seek comfort in denial, to tell ourselves it was an accident, that no harm truly lingers beyond these walls. But I will not lie to you. Darkness moves again. It breathes, it whispers, and it waits for those who will not see it. Cedric Diggory was murdered by Lord Voldemort. Harry, for the first time in his life, flinched at the name. Amos stood tall, almost waiting to face the Dark Lord at that moment. Dumbledore paused then, letting the silence stretch until it felt like an ache. Some of you are frightened, some of you are angry, some of you simply wish to forget. I understand all of it, but I ask you, do not look away. Remember him. Remember what he stood for. Dumbledore's voice softened. The world beyond these walls has changed. The ministry may deny it, the papers may twist it. But here, within Hogwarts, truth is not forbidden. We will prepare. We will protect one another. And when the time comes, we will not face it alone. He bowed his head slightly. To Cedric Diggory. The gathering echoed softly as hundreds of wands lifted. To Cedric, the students whispered back. Harry raised his wand last. His hand trembled slightly. Fred and George raised their wands higher to emit a golden glow, muttering a tribute to Diggory the Just. Ginny stared at her feet. Neville murmured something to Hermione about how Cedric once helped him in herbology. Hermione only nodded, eyes far away. Harry barely heard any of it. His gaze drifted toward the final rays of sunlight that touched the water. Hundreds of floating candles rose into the air. No one cast the spell, not visibly. They simply lifted from the shoreline, one by one, drifting out across the lake. Their reflections shimmered beneath them. Soon, thousands of lights floated across the water like fallen stars. The crowd watched in silence. Harry felt Hermione's hand slip into his. Ron stood close on his other side, Neville behind him, Ginny nearby, Fred and George together. Cho watching the candles disappear into the distance. For the first time since the graveyard, Harry looked around and truly saw them. All of them. The people who remained. The people who hurt because Cedric was gone. The people who remembered. The people who cared. Cedric had not belonged only to him, or Cho, or Amos. He had belonged to Hogwarts, and Hogwarts mourned him. As darkness slowly settled across the lake, the candles drifted toward the horizon. The merpeople's song faded into the evening, and for one brief moment, before the coming war darkened everything, the entire school stood together beneath the fading light, remembering, grieving, and saying goodbye. The floating candles continued their journey across the lake, becoming smaller and smaller points of gold against the darkening water. Harry remained where he was. The grass beneath him was damp. The evening air had turned cold. He barely noticed. He watched the last traces of sunlight fade from the surface of the lake. The merpeople's song had long since disappeared, yet somehow he still thought he could hear it. Footsteps approached behind him, soft, uncertain. Harry didn't turn around immediately. He already knew who it was. Cho stopped beside him. For several seconds, neither of them spoke. She looked out over the lake. Harry did the same. The silence stretched. Cho folded her arms against the cold. "So," she said. The word sounded strange, small. Harry swallowed. "Yeah." Another silence. Cho stared out at the lake. "Everyone keeps asking me if I'm all right." Harry didn't know what to say to that. "I don't know what that means anymore." The corner of her mouth twitched. Not a smile. Something sadder. "I told one of the Ravenclaws I was fine." She laughed quietly. A hollow sound. "Then I spent 10 minutes crying in a broom cupboard." Harry looked down at the grass. Cho folded her arms. The wind had become colder. "He was my friend," Harry nodded. "I know." The words came out too quickly, too automatically. Cho glanced at him. Something flickered across her face. Not anger. Not yet. But something close. "You do?" Harry immediately wished he could take it back. "I didn't mean..." "No." She shook her head. "It's all right." But it wasn't. Harry could hear it. The distance in her voice. The frustration. Cho stared back toward the water. The candles reflected in her eyes. "Nobody will tell me anything." Harry felt his stomach tighten. "I know. Dumbledore won't. No, McGonagall won't." Harry said nothing. Cho's gaze found him. "And you won't." The words hung between them. Harry looked away first. The lake suddenly seemed very interesting. Very easy to focus on anything except this. Cho took a step closer, not aggressive, just desperate. What happened? Harry closed his eyes. Immediately he saw it. The graveyard, the green light, Cedric falling, Voldemort's face. He opened his eyes again. The lake returned. The funeral. Cho. What happened? She repeated. Harry rubbed a hand over his face. It's... The words died. Too much. There were too many pieces. Too many things that sounded impossible even inside his own head. How did you explain Voldemort? How did you explain a graveyard? How did you explain watching someone die? I don't know how to explain it. Cho frowned. What does that mean? It means I don't know. Her expression hardened. Harry, I need time. Cho stopped. I wasn't trying to... I know. But her voice had changed. Something defensive now, something wounded. Harry looked at her and felt another twist of guilt. A week ago, her eyes had always seemed lighter somehow. Bright, quick to laugh. Now they looked exhausted. And underneath the grief, he saw something else. Anger. At the situation, at the secrets, at the fact that Cedric was dead, and Harry was the only one standing between her and the answers. Harry understood it. If their places were reversed, he'd probably feel the same. Cho stared at him for a long moment, waiting, maybe hoping he'd change his mind. He didn't. Couldn't. Eventually, she nodded. Once. Slowly. Okay. But it wasn't okay. They both knew it. The word simply ended the conversation. Cho looked back toward the lake one final time. Then, toward the castle. When she spoke again, her voice was quiet. If you ever decide to tell me... She stopped, the sentence unfinished. Harry didn't know how to answer. Cho waited anyway. When nothing came, she nodded to herself. Then turned and walked away. Harry watched her go. The distance between them felt much larger than the few yards of grass separating them. The candles continued drifting across the lake, one by one, slowly disappearing into the darkness. The castle was nearly silent. The carriages had long since departed, carrying laughter and luggage toward Hogsmeade Station. The ministry officials, all stiff robes and hollow smiles, had swept through the halls like a cold wind, leaving only paper trails and questions behind. By afternoon, even their boots no longer echoed. Hogwarts, for the first time in months, was still. Harry wasn't entirely sure why he'd come to the dungeons, only that the castle felt too crowded. Every corridor seemed filled with someone wanting to talk to him. Every conversation felt like work. Every expression carried pity. By the time he reached the potions corridor, he almost turned around. This was stupid. Snape was probably the last person in Hogwarts he wanted to speak to. The thought should have sent him back upstairs. Instead, he kept walking. The dungeon classroom door stood partially open. Inside, Professor Snape was packing away ingredients from the term. The room smelled of dried herbs and potion fumes. For a moment, Harry simply stood there. Snape looked up. His expression immediately soured. Potter? Harry nearly left. Professor? Silence. Snape returned to sorting jars. Harry remained standing there. The silence stretched. Snape looked up again. His eyes narrowed. Is there a reason you are haunting my classroom? Harry opened his mouth. Nothing came out. The question suddenly seemed ridiculous. Why was he here? Brilliant. Snape stared at him. I am waiting, with bated breath. Harry rubbed the back of his neck. Right. Another pause, then. I stole some of your ingredients? Snape blinked. Once. Of all the things he had clearly expected, that wasn't one of them. You what? Harry found himself staring at a nearby cauldron. Earlier in the year. Snape's face darkened. How many? Several. Yes. An exact number would be helpful, Harry thought. I lost count. Snape closed his eyes. For one brief moment, he looked genuinely exhausted. Remarkable. Harry waited for the shouting, the detention, the points deduction. Something. Instead, Snape simply set down the jar he was holding. What did you take? Harry listed them, one by one. The ingredients for the fire protection potion. The room grew quieter with each item. When he finished, Snape was no longer angry, just staring. You brewed it! It wasn't a question. Harry nodded. For the first task? Snape leaned back slowly. His expression became unreadable. And you have come here today because... Harry shrugged. I don't know. The answer surprised both of them. The dungeon fell silent again. Somewhere in the distance, water dripped through stone. Snape studied him. Not his scar. Not his fame. Him. The scrutiny made Harry uncomfortable. You look dreadful. Harry barked a laugh before he could stop himself. A short, ugly sound. Thanks. It was not intended as an insult. That caught Harry off guard. Snape looked away first, returning to the ingredients. I imagine you've had enough of those recently. Harry stared. The words felt strange coming from Snape. Almost wrong. Something like that. Neither spoke for a while. Snape resumed organising shelves. Harry watched. It was oddly calming. Predictable, no questions, no pity, just jars and ingredients and routine. Eventually, Snape broke the silence. Miss Chang asked you? Harry froze. Snape didn't look at him, just continued working. Asked me what? What happened? Harry looked away. The funeral flashed through his mind. Cho's eyes, their anger hidden beneath the grief. Yeah, and you refused. Harry's jaw tightened. I couldn't. Snape made a non-committal noise, the kind that wasn't agreement or disagreement, just acknowledgement. Harry frowned. You're not going to tell me I should? Should what? Talk about it. Snape gave him a look. Contrary to popular belief, Potter, I do not make a habit of instructing traumatized students on how they ought to grieve. The word landed heavily. Traumatized. Harry hated how accurate it sounded. He stopped. The words tangled somewhere between his chest and throat. I don't know how. For the first time since entering the room, Snape's expression softened. Not much. Barely at all. But enough. You assume there is a correct way. Harry frowned. Snape turned back to the shelves. There isn't. The answer sat between them, simple, unexpected. Harry looked at the stone floor. You ever lose someone? The question escaped before he could stop it. The room immediately became very still. Snape froze, only for a second. But Harry saw it. A muscle jumped in his jaw. His eyes darkened. When he spoke again, his voice was quieter. Yes. Just one word. Nothing more. Harry suddenly understood he'd stumbled into something private, something painful. Neither mentioned it again. Several minutes passed. The silence returned. Not comfortable, but no longer awkward. Finally, Harry stood. I should go. Snape nodded. An excellent idea. Harry turned toward the door. Halfway there, he stopped. Professor? Snape looked up. The ingredients? Yes? Harry hesitated. I am sorry. Snape stared at him for a long moment. Then, I know. Harry wasn't sure which surprised him more, the answer, or the fact that Snape seemed to mean it. When Harry finally stepped back into the corridor, the castle felt just a little quieter than before. Not better, not healed, just quieter. Later, Harry stood on the bridge that arched over the slope toward the Black Lake. The sky was a dull silver, clouds hanging low enough to brush the towers. The water below mirrored them perfectly, black and glassy, a single shifting pane of quiet. He gripped the railing and leaned forward, letting the wind brush through his hair. somewhere in the trees, the faintest sound of the giant squid's lazy movement rippled to the water. The scent of rain lingered. Behind him, the soft crunch of boots on wood. Dumbledore's voice came quietly. "You always did find the best places to think." Harry didn't turn, just needed to get away from the castle. "I know," Dumbledore said simply. "Grief has a way of echoing off stone walls." There was another set of footsteps, lighter, padded, and then a familiar black dog padded into view beside Dumbledore. Its fur was streaked with rain, and its eyes glinted with that unmistakable, knowing sadness. "Thought you could use another friend," Dumbledore murmured. With a small wave of his wand, a shimmer spread around them like rippling glass. The air folded, the hum of the forest fell away, and the bridge became a pocket of stillness. Their figures blurred, half invisible. The dog stepped closer. Then, in an instant, the sound of bones shifting, the faint exhale of transformation, and Sirius stood there, thinner than before, eyes hollow but alive. He didn't speak at first. He just crossed the last few steps and wrapped his godson in a rough, desperate embrace. Harry froze for a moment. Then, his hands clutched the back of Sirius's coat. When they pulled apart, Harry's eyes were damp but steady. "I didn't think I'd see you again," he said hoarsely. Sirius managed a small, crooked smile. "You'll find I'm hard to get rid of. Comes with being an old dog." A small, tired laugh escaped Harry before silence returned. They both turned toward the lake. Dumbledore stepped forward, hands folded behind his back, eyes following the horizon. "When I was your age, Harry, I thought loss was something you could outgrow, like fear or pain, but it isn't. You learn to live beside it, to carry it until it becomes a part of you." Harry's voice was quiet. "Cedric didn't deserve it. None of them did." "No," Dumbledore said softly. "But that is the cruel truth of evil. It does not weigh its victims. It only chooses where it can hurt the most." Sirius exhaled, jaw tight. "And it's not over. You know that now," Harry nodded slowly. "He's back." "He is," Dumbledore said, "and the world will try not to believe it for as long as it can. That is why what you do next matters more than what has already been done." Harry's hand clenched against the railing. "I don't want to be what he made me into." "You aren't," Sirius said sharply. His tone softened, eyes glinting. "You survived him. That's what he can't stand. That you keep surviving." Dumbledore added, voice gentler now. "You've faced what many grown wizards would have fled from. Do not let that harden you, Harry. Let it make you more careful, more kind." For a long while, none of them spoke. The clouds moved sluggishly above them, dragging light and shadow across the lake's surface. Then Harry whispered, "When I was there, it felt like he'd already won. Like no matter what I did, it wouldn't matter." Sirius's hand came to his shoulder. "He wants you to believe that. That's his trick, to make you feel small, alone. But you're not alone, Harry. Not anymore." Dumbledore stepped closer, placing a hand on Harry's other shoulder. "He is not the first tyrant to mistake fear for power. Fear fades. Love, courage, those are not so easily killed." Harry swallowed hard. His eyes stayed on the black water, but his voice wavered. "Then, why does it still hurt?" "Because you cared," Dumbledore said, "and that is the best proof you're nothing like him." The boy's chest heaved, once, then twice, and his breath hitched. The tears came quietly, not in sobs, but in trembling silence. Sirius's arm tightened around him. Dumbledore's hand remained steady on his back. For a while, the three of them simply stood there. The old wizard, the broken godfather, and the boy who had seen death and come back. The concealment charm held the world away. The lake murmured below, dark and endless. Dumbledore finally spoke again, voice barely above the wind. There will be a time for answers and another for action. But tonight, Harry, tonight is for rest. Harry nodded, the tears streaking down his face, eyes fixed on the lake that had reflected too many secrets. Sirius gave his shoulder one last squeeze, and Dumbledore's presence, quiet and watchful, felt like the only unbroken thing in the world. And when Harry finally whispered, voice cracking, the words lost in the charm's shimmer, it wasn't a question. "I'll keep going." Neither man replied, but both tightened their hands on his back, silent vows carried into the cold air. Above them, the clouds began to break, just enough for a few weak stars to shimmer on the black water. Faint, but there. The train hissed and groaned, steam curling around the platform like tired ghosts as they arrived back in London. King's Cross buzzed with the soft chaos of families reuniting, laughter, shouts, the clatter of trunks on stone. But for Harry, the noise was distant, muffled under the weight still pressing on his chest. He stood near the carriage doors, his trunk already loaded, Hedwig's cage resting beside him. The scar on his arm still ached where the ropes had dug in. The scar on his forehead, well, that one just burned when he thought too long. Across the platform, Victor Crumb approached. His walk was slower than usual, shoulders bowed under invisible strain. Hermione trailed beside him, polite but distant, her hands clasped before her. Crumb stopped a few paces away. "Harry," he said, voice low, thick with his accent. I am sorry. For everything. For not seeing what was happening. I will never forgive myself." Harry met his eyes, not angry, not forgiving, just tired. "You didn't know," he said quietly. Crumb hesitated, then extended a hand. Harry took it, their handshake brief and heavy. Crumb nodded once, turned to Hermione and murmured something soft in Bulgarian before walking off toward the barrier. Hermione watched him go, her expression unreadable, then turned back to Harry with a small sigh. "Come on," she said gently. "Ron's waiting." But Harry didn't move. A flicker of movement caught his eye. Cho Chang standing by one of the pillars, her trunk beside her, fingers fidgeting with the strap of her bag. Her face was pale, eyes rimmed with sleeplessness. But when she saw him, she managed a small, trembling smile. "Hi," she said. "Hi," he replied, voice barely above the crowd's hum. For a moment, neither spoke. The air between them was full of words neither dared to say, names, guilt, and the raw emptiness Cedric had left behind. Harry hesitated, unsure what else to do. "You doing all right?" Her eyes flicked away. "Trying. You." He swallowed. "Trying." She looked up at him then, really looked, and there was something in her gaze, shared grief, fragile understanding, that neither of them could bear to put into words. "Maybe we'll talk sometime about everything. Maybe it will be easier in writing," she said softly. "Yeah," Harry managed. "Sometime." Cho smiled faintly and turned away, vanishing into the mist of the platform crowd. Ron called from the train door, "Harry, hurry up, mate!" Before Harry could move, a familiar voice reached him. "Harry?" Not loud, not cheerful, just gentle. He turned. Molly Weasley was making her way toward him, Arthur beside her. For once, Molly wasn't bustling, she wasn't fussing. She simply looked at him, really looked at him. Harry suddenly felt exposed, as though she could see every sleepless night, every nightmare, every thought he hadn't managed to put into words. Her expression softened. "Oh, sweetheart." The words nearly undid him. She stepped forward and wrapped her arms around him. Not tightly, not possessively, just enough. The sort of hug that asked for nothing in return. Harry stood rigid for a moment. Then, something inside him gave way, and he let himself lean into it. Molly didn't say everything would be all right. She didn't tell him to be strong. She didn't ask questions. She simply held him. When she finally pulled back, her eyes were shining. "You don't have to explain anything to me," she said quietly. Harry blinked. "What?" "You look exhausted." A sad smile touched her face. "And I imagine you're tired of people asking things from you." Harry hadn't realised how badly he needed someone to understand that. Molly brushed a hand through his messy hair, the same way she did with her own children. "When you're ready to talk, you can." She squeezed his shoulder. "And if you're not ready," her voice softened further, "that's all right too." Harry swallowed. For a second he couldn't trust himself to speak. Arthur stepped forward then. His expression was tired but steady, the sort of steadiness Harry had always associated with him. "You're welcome at the Burrow, Harry." No grand declaration, no speech, just a simple fact. Arthur adjusted his glasses. "Whether you want company or somewhere quiet." A faint smile crossed his face. "Though, with Fred and George, I can't promise the second one." To Harry's surprise, a small laugh escaped him. Arthur looked pleased. Molly did not. Not because she was upset, because she knew exactly how much effort that laugh had cost. She reached up and straightened Harry's collar, a motherly habit she couldn't seem to help. Then she rested a hand against his cheek. "You don't have to carry all of this by yourself." Harry looked away, because part of him still wasn't sure how much he could carry. Molly seemed to understand that too. She didn't press. Instead, she simply kissed the top of his head, like it was the most natural thing in the world. Then she took Arthur's arm. "We should let him breathe." Arthur nodded. Before they left, he paused. "One day at a time, Harry. If the Dursleys give you more trouble, I won't be so careful next time with the fireplace." Then the Dursleys appeared at the edge of the barrier, huddled together like a trio of frightened sheep, which made Molly do a complete 180 towards them. Vernon's face was pale, and Petunia's eyes darted nervously between Harry and the crowd of wizards. Molly straightened, smoothed her robes, and walked right up to them. What she whispered was never recorded, but when she stepped back, Vernon's moustache twitched violently, and his skin turned a shade lighter than his collar. Petunia nodded rapidly, clutching Dudley's arm as they muttered something about car trouble and no need for fuss. Arthur chuckled under his breath. "Subtle as ever," he murmured. Harry managed a smile, faint but real. "Thank you," he said again. As Molly and Arthur turned to go again, Fred and George bounded up, their usual mischief dimmed but not gone. "You'll visit soon, yeah?" George asked. "Yeah," Harry said, then reached into his pocket. "Actually, here." He dropped the small heavy bag of galleons into Fred's hands. Both twins froze. Fred blinked. "Harry, we can't." "You can," Harry interrupted. "You helped me more than you'll ever know. You'll make people laugh, no matter the mood of the times. The world needs that." Ron and Hermione stood with him near the end of the platform, away from the noise. The Weasleys were loading the last of their trunks into a trolley. Hermione's parents waited patiently a few paces away. For a moment, the three of them just stood there, bags in hand, the weight of everything that had happened pressing between them. Ron broke the silence first. "Feels weird, doesn't it?" he said quietly. "Usually, we're all just talking about summer plans. Now it's this." Hermione gave a faint nod, her eyes flicking to Harry. "You don't have to go back there, you know. To them." Harry forced a smile. "It's fine. I've got the summer. Then I'll come visit the Burrow." Ron nodded quickly. "Yeah, Mum'll have kittens if you don't. She's already talking about fattening you up." That earned a small laugh from Hermione, though it came out thin. "Just be careful, okay?" she said softly, touching his arm. If you see anything strange, or if you have another dream." "I'll tell you," Harry promised. Ron's expression darkened. "Reckon the Ministry'll ever believe Dumbledore?" "No," Harry said flatly, "not yet." Hermione sighed. "They will. Eventually. They'll have to." Harry glanced down at his trunk, tracing the scratches along its lid. Cedric deserved better than what they're saying. He was brave. "He was," Hermione agreed. Her eyes glistened. Ron shifted awkwardly, rubbing the back of his neck. "You did right by him, mate. You brought him back. That's what matters." Harry looked at him, really looked, and saw the same tired loyalty that had carried them through dragons, trolls, and darker things still. "Thanks," he said quietly. A whistle blew overhead. Parents began calling out final farewells. Hermione stepped forward and wrapped him in a hug before she could second-guess it. "Don't carry it alone, Harry," she murmured. When she stepped back, Ron offered an awkward half-smile and punched his shoulder. Not hard, just enough to say, "I'm here." "We'll write, yeah?" "Yeah." "Promise you won't do anything heroic without us," Ron added, trying for humour, and, for once, Harry managed a small real laugh. "I'll try," he said. "No guarantees." Ron grinned faintly. "Didn't think so." They all walked their separate ways. "I'll be all right," he said under his breath. The countryside opened before him, wide and sunlit, the track stretching toward whatever waited next. And though the ache of loss still pulsed in his chest, there was something new beneath it. Quiet, stress, and an unfamiliar rage that started to brew.